Hello everyone, welcome to A1.1 lecture number 7. Today's lecture is going to be about Haben and Sein, two of the important helping verbs for perfect tense in German. Perfect tense is very important in German, especially in speaking. It's not as important in writing, but in speaking it is very important. This is slightly advanced for A1.1, but you have to learn this already in A1, so I included it already. So without further delay, let's get right into it. Perfect, just like any other tense. For instance, plusquamperfect or simple perfect in English, for example. In German, it's called Präteritum. It's a past tense. Yeah, so you have to know that it's a very common spoken language or tense in this regard, and it has two to three parts. So you have subject, then you have a helping verb, and then comes the object. And obviously you can have object that is a direct object or an indirect object. These are not important things. The important thing here in this video is to focus on the helping verbs. So some of the examples, and afterwards I'm going to really dive in deeper to really navigate how these helping verbs work. So examples are: Ich habe gegessen, I have eaten. Sie ist gekommen, she has come. Wir haben gelernt, we have learned. Du bist gegangen, you have gone. And then, as I said earlier, perfect tense has helping verbs which are haben and sein, and then you have participes zwei. So it's the third form of a verb that in German often case in a regular verbs system get ge in the front and at the end a t. So the verb stem stays the same. I'm going to clarify this later. But in irregular case, for instance, the verb stem is diminished or perturbed and the last two letters are en. Often is that case with irregular verbs. So you have to watch out for that. That's why irregular verbs in German you have to learn by heart, because you don't know how the stem will be disturbed. Yeah. So as some of the examples again: Ich habe Fußball gespielt, I have played football. Er ist nach Hause gegangen, he has gone home. And again, remember that an auxiliary verb is conjugated, yeah, and the participle is at the end, as I mentioned before. So the conjugation, which we discussed in the last video as well, for haben is: Ich habe, du hast, sie, es hat, wir haben, ihr habt, sie haben. For sein it is: Ich bin, du bist, sie, es ist, wir sind, ihr seid, sie sind. You just have to memorize that. And these are both irregular by nature, especially sein is totally irregular. So you have perturbation all over the place. So you have to remember that by heart, okay? And in haben, for instance, you see it's only in du and sie, es. The B is basically missing, yeah? So you have to use the correct form. Wann benutzt man haben? When do you actually use it? You use it for almost all the regular verbs, yeah? Most verbs that are regular by nature, but also a lot of verbs that are irregular by nature. But the situation where haben is mostly used is when there is no movement. This is important because sein is always involved with motion, okay? Getting up, moving, running, driving, all these things you use sein for. So all the no movement associated activities take basically haben as an auxiliary verb for a sentence, okay? We will see some examples now. Ich habe ein Buch gelesen. So you can't be running book when you are reading book when you are running, right? Or you're getting up and are jumping and you are sitting there, no motion involved, and you are reading a book. That's why it's important to know that. Yeah? Sie hat Musik gehört. Wir haben Deutsch gelernt. Du hast Kaffee gekocht. And sein, the verb shows movement, okay? For instance, we talked about gehen, fahren, kommen. The verb shows change of state. That's also very important. Change of state. You are sleeping and then you are getting up. Aufstehen, yeah. Einschlafen. So you are awake and then you fall asleep. Sterben. You are alive and then you die. So you have to know the state change as well as movement always takes Sein as an auxiliary verb, yeah, helping verb. Ich bin ins Kino gegangen. Du bist aufgestanden. Er ist krank geworden. Wir sind zu Hause geblieben. And again, participes Y, how do you form that? It's important that, for instance, in this case, machen. So if you look here, we have the stem of the verb, in this case, the macht, M-A-C-H is the stem of the verb. So this will stay the same, okay? And you have to take GE, put it in front, and remove basically the EN part and replace it with T. So gemacht, that's one example. And this is for the regular verbs, okay? So in case of regular verbs, the verb stem stays the same. That's the main difference between regular and irregular verbs, that the regular verbs, when you are, for instance, conjugating them, the regular verbs keep their verb stem maintained, while irregular verbs gets disturbed. And it is not necessarily in present. For instance, a verb can be in a present regular verb, but in past, in preteritum or perfect, it can be irregular, and we will see some examples of that, yeah. So if you look here again, these are regular verbs. This is a regular verb: spielen, gespielt; lernen, gelernt; arbeiten, gearbeitet; fragen, gefragt. And in all these cases, you saw that the verb stem was maintained. GE we put in the front, and at the end we ended the word with T. So you have participes Y that always stays then at the end. If it's a regular verb, it will be GE in the front of the verb, T at the end. If you have an irregular verb, and that irregular verb you have to use at the end of the sentence. There are some regulation for that, but mainly you have to watch out that the verb stem might change. You have to add GE, maybe or maybe not. It depends also on the context. And often time you have to end the verb with EN at the end. So these are called also strong words with stem, where the stem changes, and you have to memorize them by heart, yeah. Examples of that are gehen, for instance, gegangen. So you see gehen, gehe is the stem of this verb, G-E-H, and that is changed. Yeah? And then you have essen, gegessen. Another one is sehen, gesehen. Schreiben, geschrieben. Kommen, gekommen. Again, the verb stem stays the same, but you have to watch out. At the end, it's en, so it is still irregular by nature. Yeah? And also in preteritum, common, calm, yeah, it has changed. Some examples with haben: Ich habe das Fenster geöffnet. I have opened the window. Du hast deine Hausaufgaben gemacht. You have done your homework. Wir haben Fußball gespielt. We have played football. Ihr habt eine Pizza gegessen. You have eaten a pizza. Sie haben laut gelacht. They have laughed loudly. And with Sein, ich bin zur Schule gegangen. I have gone to school. Du bist nach Hause gefahren. So you see, it's all about movement now with Sein. Gegangen, gefahren. You have driven home. Er ist schnell gelaufen. He has run quickly. Sie ist 6 Uhr aufgestanden. That's the state change now we're talking. Huh? She has gotten up at 6 a.m. Wir sind spät angekommen. We have arrived late. So these were some of the key aspects to Sein and Haben when you have to use them as auxiliary verb for perfect tense. Now I'm gonna go through some where you have to fill in the blanks. So please do this practice with me. I'm gonna give you some time, and in that time you have to correct it, and afterwards I'm gonna move forward. This is important for you to really understand the context that we discuss in this video. So the first sentence, for instance, I see ich, then meine Tasche, and then I see the verb finden. And now you have, let's say, 10 seconds, and you can fill it. In the meantime, when these 10 seconds are passed, I can then show you the result, yeah? Or I can fill it for you. Ich habe meine Tasche gefunden. Now the next one. Du zur Arbeit, and then I see fahren. Almost similar thing we just saw earlier. A sentence we just saw earlier. So movement is involved. So you have to see which helping verb is used for movement. Then you have to see it is do, and we just talked about that in perfect you have to conjugate the helping verb. So movement, we have to use sein. It's do. If you watch my previous videos, I think it's video number 3 or 2, we talked about the conjugation, how the conjugations work. Du bist zur Arbeit gefahren. Now I see einen Apfel, and then I see essen. There is no movement involved. He's just probably sitting there, and there is apple in front of him on a table. What will he do? We talked about when there is no movement, helping verb haben will be used. For air, we have talked about conjugations in my video number 3 or 4. I think it's number 4 in this A1.1. Hat einen Apfel gegessen. Then I see wir, lange, and then warten. Wir haben lange gewartet. Then I see sie, sehr müde, and werden. Sie ist sehr müde geworden. That will be it for today. It was about Sein and Haben. Hope you enjoyed the video. For other videos that will be coming in the next days, stay tuned, and thank you very much, and also subscribe to my channel.